Hello, future artists. I hope that you can find some of the tips that I'm going to offer from what I've learned over many years of sort of stop and start doing art. Some of the tips in order to become an artist yourself. One of the things I wanted to do with this channel is to offer relaxation as you develop your art skills. And so what I usually will always start off with is just sensing your body. So a lot of times we've been checked out of our bodies and there's tension. So as you draw and do other things in life, so I also have a channel where I teach people music. So it's how to play the ukulele. So that's another channel that I have if you wanted to check that out. It's called Uke Can Do It. And my goal is to offer the things that have really helped me in my healing journey through life. So most of us are having that. And these are the things that can really help you with that. One of the reasons that I have found is that both music and art are very immersive. So when you're focusing on something that's very beneficial, like music or art, you really are not thinking about other things and your body gets to benefit from that focus. So let's just get started and we're going to check in, relax, and I'm sitting quite upright. I've just got a very low tech kind of a thing going on, so I'm hoping that this is going to serve well for people that want to benefit from anything that I may have learned over the years about that. So again, we're sitting upright, we relax the belly area just like in music and take a nice deep breath in using your breath to just check for tension, relax, and let it go. Now, there are a few basics that I want you to know. One of them is that you don't need fancy equipment to get started or even throughout. Many of the famous artists of the past had very modest materials and tools. So this is just a 2B pencil. I do have a sharpener. I would use a knife also if I didn't have a sharpener. Just a basic eraser. And this is photocopy paper, so just regular paper. I have a clip to keep it nice and still as I'm drawing. This is a well-used surface, as you can see. It's hardboard. You can get it anywhere, a hardware store, and they'll even cut a certain dimension for you. I have them elevated on these simple weights because in order to get a perspective, it's better to have your area elevated on a bit of a slant. So this is about 3 inches high from this table up here. And I have a light source coming in from the side. You could use a lamp or anything to create your light source. And then it's going to cast light from wherever. So check to see your light source for me is on my left, a window. And then you're going to have that, so you've got your tools, you've got your light source, you've got your paper on a surface that's inclined. And then we're going to do some warm up. So we'll do that each time to develop our muscles of our hand while we relax. So we're constantly sort of checking in. And I am going to just sort of quickly review things each time as we start on each new video. And I've done a few practice sessions. I also have a mat board here that I took out of an old picture, and I'm going to check my drawing periodically just to see. And you can see that I've made a few practice runs, and then the mat board is just going to frame it just to give me an idea of what I think of it, you know. And if I ever did want to frame it, then I can see what I've got. I've signed it, and you can also see that there's the warm-up area here outside of the frame. You could use all the paper to do that. So there's a few just very basic things as an artist that you're doing, and that is you've got your tools, you've got your setup, you're sitting and enjoying that, and then there's something, that word is called values. So values is in art lightness and darkness, and then there's perspective, there's atmospheric perspective, there's perspective taking a 3D object and making it look that way on a flat surface. And there's a basic variety of skills that you can learn, anyone can learn, to create that look. So 3D object, flat surface, how do I do it? All right, so I'm going to just take my implement, and I know that when I do my warm-up, what I'm doing is I'm taking the material out of the implement and putting it on the paper, and I can really enjoy that process. And another important thing to develop is your hand muscles. So just like in music, when you're playing a fretted instrument or any instrument, the muscles of your hand will be developed slowly over time. So that's why some people can really draw straight lines. And as I'm left-handed, I'm going to be just finding it easier to do certain directions with my left hand. And if you're right-handed, I'm not going to be very skilled at this, but I'm going to do it, is just, again, and I'm moving, I'll show it up close. I'm keeping the hand stationary for the most part and moving the fingers so that the muscles develop, and that's one area of development that I want to encourage or build. And then I'm going to start to move my wrist to do more of those, and then eventually my arm if I was going to make bigger ones. But for right now, we're just going to start off with some straight down. So if you're right-handed, you're placing the implement on the paper and just pulling down straight. And I'll go back to my more dominant hand because you see how they're wiggly. I'm going to be coming down. So let's say that's about 10 or 15. Then I'm going to place it here and come across. And again, as a right-handed person, it's going to probably feel better, more in control when you're coming from right to left. So fingers, fingers, and then I'm going to do the same here. So this is called cross-hatching, the technical term, and you can create shadows with cross-hatching, and that's again values, and we'll get into that in a minute. So now I've come down and I've come across, and now I'm going to go diagonal, so I'm just going to start here, and again with the right-handed, you're probably going to find going from here to here. I'll show it with my left, here to here, possibly easier to make. Now I've moved more of my wrist, so warming up, building the muscles so that I have more control. You're not going to have that right away, but you will get it over time. So now I'm coming the other direction. And I'm not pressing overly hard, and I'm also not holding the pencil and drawing the line. I'm really just letting the material come onto the paper as the paper takes the material out of the implement that you're using. Right, across, so I'm going to come down here. And now I'm going to do some circles just around. And I could press harder, so I could really dig into the paper and get some darker values. Again, with the cross-hatching, I could be pressing harder, making them closer together, which is going to be giving darker, more depth. And that's something you can spend as much time on, just doing that, you know, even when you're doing something else. If you're watching a program or something, just do your warm-up exercises. So we've gotten that. I'm just going to kind of cordon that off. Now, to take my subject, my apple subject, I'm going to start by doing a few things. I'm usually always looking at the entire object and then honing in on certain areas. So what we start with is we're going to measure the object first, and I'm going to take my implement, and I don't need a device that has measurings on it. I'm just going to, not like a ruler, you just need this implement, and my arm is going to be, I'm sitting upright, and I'm going to extend my arm fully from the shoulder out, and then I'm going to place this edge. I have both of my eyes open. Sometimes we're going to close one eye or squint, but right now I've got them both open, and I'm placing without touching the implement, so I'm about 3 inches away, and I'm going to sit straight, place the edge when I'm looking with both eyes here, and then I'm going to move this down to where I see the bottom from this perspective, and then I'm going to grab a measurement. It doesn't have to be exact because you're not trying to make something exact, and I'm going to mark that first one there, and then I'm going to come down here and mark the bottom, and just lightly to give those lines. So that's the height. And again, with my arm fully extended, I'm going to find the widest area of the apple, and I'm going to sit back about 3 inches away from the apple, arm straight, and then I'm going to put this edge at the widest edge that I can see, and then I'm going to grab a measurement at the widest spot with my finger, and I'm going to come and I'm going to place it here. Now, it's better to draw a straight line joining these, so at least you have a rough idea of the center. And you're not going to know the exactness of this, so just dive in and make a mark somewhere, and then put the measurement down, and then you can check to see if they're equal and adjust as necessary. So I'm going to take the measurement from there to there, and then I'm going to compare it, and I'm pretty good, I'm pretty bang on. If I was a bit too much this way, I would move this one in and this one out. Now I'm going to sit back again, and I'm going to look at the overall curvature of the apple, and I'm going to start to just gently sketch in these lines. Again, we're not trying to create a photographic representation. I'm just going to curve. So I've got my implement held quite back. I'm not scooched up to the end. I'm back here, and I'm looking at the apple, curving, and I'm coming down, and I'm meeting up with this line, and I can measure the bottom angle of the apple because it's not straight. If I held this out straight, I could see that it's like this. So I'm going to mark a bit of an angle in there, that the bottom is on an angle, curving around, referencing the apple itself, coming around here, and then I've joined it. So it's a circle. And you could have just drawn a circle, but you've now learned how to sort of get a rough idea of the measurement. Now, to use your standard eraser, what you're going to do is, in previous erasings, you're going to have stuff on it. So take it, just so that you clean it up, just rub it on your paper to make sure that it's nice and clean before you go applying it, and then possibly smudging up the area that you don't want to. So I'm going to remove this center line now. And then I'm going to check the bottom and go, okay. Now this area here is indented, and it also has a shadow. There's a shadow here that's being cast by my light source. So I can also see light where the light is being reflected off of the object, and there's lighter areas of the apple being yellow or red. So with just my pencil, I'm not going to be using color today. I'm going to indicate the dark and light. And a good way to start to do that is to look at your apple and then squint both your eyes gently, not really tight, no tension, just gently soften your gaze. And you should start to see where the highlights are more distinctly, and also where the shadows are more prominent, so darker value. And I can see that at the bottom where it's tight and the light is absent. So I'm going to come in and roughly mark where the darkest areas are lightly, and I'm going to go back into those areas. And I might even put a little mark like this just to show that that needs to be really darkened. And then the entire shadow that's being cast is much lighter, but it's coming out like this, and I can measure it, arm extended, and it goes from here, the bottom, to the top. So I can just go, okay, it's about that. And then the table is lighter because doesn't have any appleness on it. And now if I look at the divot area, I'm going to take another measurement. So I'm going to extend my arm fully straight again, and I'm going to again put this edge, when I see this edge of the apple about 3 inches away, and then I'm going to take a mark where I start to see it go in to the darkness there, and then I'm going to come over here, and then I'm going to mark that there. So now I know that I need to put the same level of darkness, if not a bit, the values are somewhat similar, but also slightly different, a little bit lighter, depending on how intense your light is. I'm going to mark this area, and I'm going to do the same kind of marking as I did here to tell me I need to go in there and then this area again is much darker because it's going downward. Now for my highlights, I'm going to squint again, and I'm going to preserve the highlights by circling them. And I'm going to take my eraser now and take that measurement out. And there's a highlight. I'm going to preserve the whiteness of the paper. And there's another one here. There's another one here. I can see more here. And this was the lines to get the shape of the apple. So now I'm going to just gently erase those. And when I squint, I can see that I need to preserve some little areas here. And then I've got the stem. So when I sit back and I look at the stem, I can go, okay, when I'm sitting back from my perspective, does the height of the stem go outside of the apple, or does it stay within? And I can see that it stays within. And I know that it's going into this darkest, so I'm not going to go above where my highlight is. And I can sit back and I can just lightly draw it in, and I can see that there's the darkness there of the actual stem itself is darker. Okay, so we've preserved our highlights. We've got a little bit of values going on in terms of where we need to do some cross hatching. So again, checking in to make sure that you feel pretty relaxed. And let's start to put our implement down at the edge of the apple and make some lines, just like we were doing in the warm-up. Place and pull, and not coming out too far, but staying within our little values marker. So I've come across, and now I'm going to come in another direction this way. So I'm press and pull. And this will get more proficient for you as you go along. Now I'm looking and I'm referencing the apple and then going back here and seeing the comparison of the darkness. And I can really see that along the edge where there's absence of light, I'm going to come in and I'm going to really curve around the apple shape. And it's coming over here even, and then I'm going to put more of the material out of the implement right into that area. And I'm liking the depth of that value now. And then I'm going to come up and make the same gauge of the depth. So this area right near the stem where I've put those marks in, I'm going to start to make some depth with shadow with my implement. Come down, and then I can see. So I'm just going to really add the graphite into that area. And then I can see that the stem itself is casting a shadow, so I'm going to curve a line there where the stem is. I'm not paying any attention to the color other than where it's darker on the apple. And then I've got an absence of light here, so I've gone a little bit into my highlight. That's okay, not a big deal. I can take that out with the eraser. Got my shadow where my stem is, this angle. Now I'm just gauging the entire apple, the value. So now I'm going to start to look at color. And I know that the redness of the apple, because I'm not using any colors on this sketch, I'm going to indicate with more of the graphite to indicate that that's darker. It is in shadow, but it's also red. So I'm going to start to take, avoiding the highlighted areas, I'm going to start to sweep lines in curves. Again, I'm holding my hand quite still and I'm moving in the shape of the apple, staying out of the highlighted preserved areas. And I'm curving. And then I'm developing the muscles of the forearm. I can really feel them. So I'm following the apple curves. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to come up a little bit into the highlighted area, but still preserving it. It's here. And I might extend the curve if I feel like it needs to be a bit bigger. Now I've got a shadow cast by this onto here, so I'm going to come in and put some lines there, but they're not nearly as dark as what's down here. Now I'm going to come again looking out for my highlights, and I'm going to come this way, sweep, place and pull, place and pull. And as my pencil, you don't have to do it this way, but just as an idea and a good exercise, is curving lines gently, lightly. And again, you can't do that same pressing if you're holding your pencil farther back. My eyes are going to my drawing and then back to the apple. And then I'm going to just move around, really enjoying the process of depositing the graphite onto the paper. Very relaxed. And I'm following a bit of a curve, faster pace. It would be like, creating endurance muscles at the gym. When you're going faster versus slower, you create a certain part of the muscle to develop. And I can see that the red is kind of creeping over here, so I'm going to do a little bit of that, just lightly. Again, I've got a highlight here, and your light can change. It doesn't really matter if your light changes, your light source, if it's the sun and it goes behind a cloud. Just persevere on with what you've already established in terms of your highlights. I've got a bit more red here. There's some red over here, so I'm coming around. And I'll go back to the stem in a minute, just checking the values. Curve, redness. I might draw like 15 little lines to curve, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I can press a little bit harder. The redness here. Go back to this shadow. Maybe come across this way. Going out to the edge of my apple, and again developing the muscles there as I slowly move. And this takes time to develop, but it's very rewarding and very enjoyable to do. Okay, and so a little bit of redness. I might do some little crosities just for interest's sake, lightly. You can always remove them if you do them lighter, whereas if you press hard. So there's my highlight. I'm going to come back in because this is more red. Go over that a bit. And then I'm going to take my mat and just see what I think. And I quite like it. I think it's time to do the stem. So I'm going to pay attention to the stem, and it's got a little darkness here. And then it's got more dark on this side, of course, where the light is away from it. And then just lightly draw in the edge. There's my cast shadow. And you can just do some little curvies. Think of following the edge of the, like drawing a crescent sort of moon shape. And you will get better in terms of your muscle development, and also your ability when you squint to see the light and the dark and preserving of the highlights. Now I'm going to take my eraser and checking to make sure that it's not going to put stuff onto the paper that I don't want it to. And I'm going to come in and just really remove anything, including the little indication lines of where I mark them and preserve the highlight area. There's a couple over here. So I know that I've preserved those, and then I can get that little bit away, and then I can come back in and again paying attention to the fact that you don't want to be filling those in, but just come around now and you can come right up to the edge of them, putting a little bit more curve, 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 and then here, curve. Drawing a little bit more of that shadow of the stem. That's sneaking over there. And then I'm going to come in here. Preserve the highlight, go on the other side of where the apple drops away. So now the apple is kind of sitting out in space, and let's go down and look at this now. So I know that there's a shadow here, but it's not nearly as intense as this one. So I'm going to take where I measured my line to and just start to do lines again, thinking about exercise and development of that. You could try and place them, fairly equally apart. And the fewer lines, of course, the less intense. So it's going to look lighter. And now I'm going to squint and look at the actual value of the shadow compared to the depth of shadow I've created. And I'm going to come right up and maybe come across again, because I feel like this is not nearly as dark as this, but it's not as light as what's happening with the lines being as far apart as they are. All the way down to the bottom. And then I'm going to take my mat and see what I think. And I like that, but I don't want to have all this white space. But I don't want what I do here to look like this, because I don't want it to be the same, because I know this is darker. So I'm just going to draw farther apart lines. Now I'm moving my whole arm. And again, you're expressing yourself creatively. It's not meant to be a photograph. Now I'll put this back on and see what I think. So it's great, but I've still got some area up here. Oops. Okay, and then just some final touches. Come back in here, maybe make it a bit more arty. Come a little, do some scritchies. Darken up anything that I think still needs to. And you can spend as much time doing this as you want. Keep going back in and sort of pulling those lines straighter. Come over here, darken that area. But you can see how when you have the measurement and then you've got the indentation, then now the object looks 3D on the flat surface. So you've taken your values, your shadows, your light, your highlights. And again, you're going to be able to make these highlights stand out more by coming around them and depositing the material to make the white more white as you put the material up to it, but not in those preserved areas that you've got. All right, so I'm going to sign it, and then I'm going to check it for one last time and go, yeah, I really like that. So as we go along, we're going to start to work with different mediums, but definitely if you're interested in getting started, don't feel you have to go out and get anything fancy. The one thing that is really nice to have is what's called a kneaded eraser. So with an eraser like this, you've got these large areas to get in, can be challenging, but a kneaded eraser is kind of like putty that you can form into a real good point, and then you go in and you can take these areas right out with less clunkiness than these bigger erasers. But again, this will work absolutely. And so I hope you've enjoyed that and you've learned some ways to get started on your own art if you would like to do that. And I'm going to continue posting videos once a week, and I will see you on the next one. Have a nice day and enjoy your drawing.